Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Doug Thompson podcast here. This is the Emerging Speaker Series. And today I've got you may wonder, so I've got Mr. Thom Singers on, and he's spoken to over, was it 1,000? Was it 1,001 today?
Probably 1,200 by now.
Probably 1,200 different audiences and stuff. So, and I hear you thinking, well, maybe I don't hear you thinking, but I know what you're thinking. We'll go back to Magnum PI and the voice in his head. How does somebody with that many speaking gigs an emerging speaker? And well, we had a conversation we met last week, and he brought up a good point. He says things were going good till this little thing called COVID came, and now he's been rebuilding a business. So he has a little bit of experience with that. So Thom, welcome. I've been talking enough.
That's all right, Doug. Thanks for having me on your show.
Well, thanks a lot. And go ahead and give us some background, where you got started, what you're doing today.
We're here to talk about the speaking world. So I've been a professional speaker for, 15, 16 years now. But many years before that, I kind of caught the bug that's what I wanted to do. I was in sales and marketing for law firms and banks and other professional services firms. And when you're in sales and marketing and business development, you go to a lot of conferences and you sit in those conference room chairs. And I can remember sitting in these ballrooms and watching the speaker and thinking, wow, she or he has a better job than I do. And so I was like, how does somebody get to do that? So 15 years ago, I wrote my first book, and, I decided I would sort of, pursue that. And then during the recession of 08, 09, I got laid off. So I told my wife, I'm just going to dive in. There were no marketing jobs. I'm going to dive in and see if I can do anything. And by the time the economy started to come back, I had a full-time speaking gig where I was earning what I had earned in corporate America. And so I just rode that wave for the next 10 years till the pandemic hit and sort of changed everything for me.
Yeah, you got laid off again. You got laid off from speaking when that happened.
I got laid off from my life when COVID hit. Yeah, it was hard.
Well, so what's been your experience? So if you can think back way that time where you got laid off and started out speaking, what are some of the things that you went through, hurdles, lessons that you learned, things that you relied upon, built upon?
So that last job that I had in 2006, 7, and 8, I was working for a consulting firm, and the woman who hired me, she was really, really smart, good business person. She knew I'd already been like sniffing around speaking, and I was speaking at a lot of conferences around town. And we had lunch one day, and she said, "That's what you want to do." And I said, "Yes, it is." She goes, "Why don't you come to work for me in the interim, and I'll help you build it. I'll give you extra vacation days. In addition to my 3 weeks vacation that I got as a senior director level person, I also got 3 weeks for my speaking business." And the deal she made was, for those 15 days, if you're traveling to give a speech, the rest of the day when you're not on stage, you're working remotely. And I mean, working remotely in 2008, that wasn't even a thing, right?
Yeah, that was like dial-up still, I think.
Right. we figured out how to do it for a couple of years. And then during the recession, she had to retool the company, and I got caught in a layoff. But I already had laid the foundation. I already had spent several years sticking my toe in, kicking the tires, and then actually getting paid to speak and traveling. And so when I went full time, I already had momentum. And my topic was about your network and your brand, and how do you get involved in the community, and how does that help your career? And during a recession, everybody suddenly pays attention to that whole concept of networking and who do I know? The rest of the time, they don't care who they know. If things are good, they're like, yeah, whatever. But if they're worried about getting laid off, or they are laid off, or their industry's in trouble, everybody wants to learn about business relationships and how to work with them. So in 2009, 10, and 11, my topic was really hot.
Yeah,
I was good at it, and I already had momentum. And so that's how I sort of launched into it. And then I rode that through 2020 pretty well.
That's, you go back to your career of sales and marketing and stuff. And I'm in a similar thing, except I speak nerdology, and we'll get to that here. I mean, you're chair of the Austin Technology chair, president. I guess titles don't matter.
Well, titles, they call me CEO. I'm really the executive director. The CEO title was somebody upgraded many people before me from executive director to CEO. I don't care. I run the place.
Yeah. And so you talk to a lot of tech people in that. So we're in that same thing, but we're used to talking to people. All those things that would make, that a speaker needs, it seems like if you're in sales and marketing, you seem to have that, or you use it on a regular basis.
Well, I tell everybody, I get a lot of calls from people who want to be speakers, right? They're just starting, or they think they want to start, do it as a second career or side business. And I always ask them about their sales skills. because if you want to be a professional speaker, you're a salesperson first and a speaker second, because if you can't sell it, if you can't land the gig and get a check,
Yes.
then you're not a professional speaker. So you have to be in sales long before you take the stage.
Yeah. And I found that selling yourself is a little different than selling a product in my career. So there's the mechanics are very similar, but the feeling is way different.
It's harder when you are the product. It's hard when someone says no, because you've got to learn to have an even thicker skin than when you're selling something or someone else. But the reality of it is that you're constantly having to market, and yet you can't come off like you're constantly marketing. So it's a weird business because you are the product, and everyone thinks they're a good speaker. I talked to this one person many years ago. We kind of started out the same time, mutual friend. Why is Thom getting all this work and I'm not? And, the friend confided in me and said, I don't think they're that good. And so she nicely said that to the person. They go, no, every time I finish a speech, people come up and say, great speech. And what I learned is that we live in a polite society.
Yeah.
So if you're basing the fact that you're a good speaker based on the fact that somebody says, hey, that was a great speech, it might have been they didn't know what else to say. They got in the elevator and you were standing there. They have the name tag on. They know that that they were in the audience. They look at the speaker and say, hey, great speech. And I told that to one woman once, and she said, no, I'm honest. I would never lie. And I'm like, what would you say to a speaker that was highly mediocre? And she said, I would look at him and say, I love that story about your sister. And I'm like, and do you know what the speaker just heard?
Yeah,
They heard you
I
say
loved it.
great speech. So
Yeah.
people say, if you don't know you're good because people tell you you're good, how do you know you're good? And it's pretty simple. You know you're a good speaker when after you give a speech, somebody comes up to you and gives you says a derivative of, what else can you do for me? What that means is they say, do you have a book I can buy? Do you have a podcast I can listen to? Do you do coaching or consulting? Would that speech work for nurses or lawyers? Or the dreaded, can I take you to coffee and pick your brain? Speakers freak out when somebody says, I want to take you to coffee and pick your brain. It's the biggest compliment you can get from somebody, because I'll ask you a question. Have you ever gone up to somebody you thought was highly mediocre and said, could I pick your brain for an hour to learn a little bit more? No. So the only way you know you're good is if people vocally tell you they want more of you.
Yeah, and it's sort of a balance I find too, because I've had that, and I'm a little uncomfortable because I don't want to come across as bragging about things. Like you said, that's sort of a skill. Where do you find that balance between I'm the greatest thing on the planet and and not, right? How do you find that? And I guess it's more of the not transparent. The word I'm a speaker and I can't think of the word. It comes across as real. And that's not the word I was looking for, but you know where I'm going.
Well, I find it's kind of, you can be a little self-deprecating. Like when people ask me something about my speech, I tell them, what my experience is, what my topic is. And then I say, look, I've done 1,200 paid speeches. From what I understand, I suck less than most speakers you could hire.
Yeah. Humor is always a great tool.
Self-deprecating.
Yeah.
Usually that cuts the edge off it a little bit.
Keeps you humble. You're right. And some of the best speakers that I've met and talked about, and they were that way. They were very humble about things, but if through a self-deprecating way. They didn't, they knew they were good. They had confidence. The confidence comes across, but it wasn't that I am better than you. It was never that. So going back, so we've both done a TEDx, and you've got one on me. You actually had your daughter do a TEDx.
So well, let me brag right here. I've actually done two. No,
all right, no,
I've done two TEDx's, but in my family, my 22-year-old will tell you that's really cute that Dad's done two TEDx speeches. I did one before he ever did. So my daughter did a TEDx youth program. The way it came about is her older sister had been the curator for speakers for TEDx Carnegie Mellon University. And one of the speakers was a professional speaker who I knew through the National Speakers Association and some other business circles. And my daughter got to know her, actually ended up babysitting her children. And so our families became friends. And her son they're Jewish. And when they're 13, they don't get a big party. They have to do like an Eagle Scout type project, something to give back to the community. And their son decided he wanted to put on a TEDx youth program.
Oh, okay.
And so they talked to my daughter about it, because she had run the one at her college, and when she was in high school had run a couple of TEDx youths here in Austin. And they were looking for teenagers. And my younger daughter, who was 15, was like, I'll apply. And we're like, really? What are you going to talk about? She came up with an idea, and it was a good idea. So she applied. And of course, our families were friends. You know, I'm not saying it was nepotism, but she got chosen. And we flew her to Pittsburgh, and she delivered, you know, a 15-minute talk on, you know, when you're in high school, you got to follow your own heart, not follow your parents and teachers. And it's a pretty good little talk. And in fact, you know, for a 15-year-old, it's probably a better talk than mine.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. As a parent is one thing, but also from a speaker perspective of knowing it was a message delivered and stuff like that. So that's really impressive. And it's
Yeah,
okay with nepotism to get hired. That's
yeah,
okay. That's
well,
that's right.
she's 22 now, and she cringes at the TEDx talk when she was 15, because she's like, oh, look at my hair. Oh, look at how I did. I'd be so much better now. But she really was spectacular at it. And so I actually have it on my website. I have a button that says TEDx, where you can watch the two that I did, one 6 years ago and one last year. And then below it, I have hers. And I hear from clients all the time who are looking to hire me. They'll watch my TEDx talks, but then they'll watch my daughters. And when they call me, they'll be like, oh yeah, hers was way better than yours.
Yeah. Can I hire her? So
No, they haven't said that yet, but they could. She'll charge
Yeah.
it.
I'm definitely going to go check that out after this done. And thanks to Gary for thinking of the word I couldn't spit out of my mouth a while ago. Authentic. Yeah, that's what I was looking for. Thanks, Gary, for that. So in the reemerging, so after COVID's over and stuff on that, and you know, how did you sort of get through that? I realized that the flywheel probably picked up pretty quickly because again, you exercise that muscle for a while, but the market's different too.
The market's different, and not as quickly as you'd think. So, you know, when the pandemic hit, there were a lot of speakers who, you know, were very public about, oh, I've just pivoted to virtual. I'm making more money than I ever have. And good for them. Some of them were even honest about it. But for a lot of people, the business really dropped. And what I found with my clients, and these other people are like, no, you just didn't know how to ask for it. My clients were mid-sized associations, and their budgets were slashed. They made their money off their big conference. So not having a conference, they didn't have any money. So they went from paying pretty good speaking fee to like, we've got $1,000. Well, if you were used to making $10,000 and now the people are calling you saying, we only have 1,000, you would need 10 times the business to break even. And even if it was a quarter, you'd need 4 times the business. So I found that as hard as I worked doing virtual, and I did a lot of virtual presentations, I wasn't making but about a third the amount of money as I had made in 2019. And so that was hard on me in a couple of ways. One is my wife, her job, she was a meeting planner and worked on an hourly basis for an association. So, you know, her hours were slashed because her association wasn't doing meetings. And my business dropped, you know, by easily 2/3, if not 3/4 of income. And so it became stressful. It became hard. I went through a little of a mental health challenge because I kind of self-identified with having grown a successful business over 12 years. So coming out of it, the first year, everybody had contracts with speakers in 2020. So when you went into 2022 and more events started happening, they were using the speakers they'd paid for 2 years ago. So there wasn't as much business as people thought. Now, I had contracts I had to follow through on, some of which had paid me in full 2 years earlier. So you'd go and give the speech, but the money was spent 30 months earlier. So 22 was a really rough year. 23 is when it really started to come back, but I had taken this role running this small local tech association. So my amount of time to devote to my speaking business wasn't all there. So I've gone back to sort of my roots of having a full-time job and having a speaking business at the same time. And a lot of people will tell you, oh, you got to burn the ships, just have a speaking business. I actually like having really good healthcare and kind of a set, you know, amount of income that I can then add to. But the flywheel took a while to get rolling. It really did. And coming in now to 24, I'm probably back to about 60% of what I was doing in 2019, but I'm almost full because of having this other commitment. So the business coming in, I got 2 referrals in the last 72 hours for really good possible things. And I'm like, wow, it's going to make for, if I get both of them, it's going to make a great year. And I'm not shooting for, you know, being on the road 100 nights a year.
Yeah.
I'm shooting for how do I balance the two? But it took 4 years from when the pandemic hit to
Yeah.
now for me to really feel like, oh, I could do this full time again. And oh, this is a legit business where I can make my way. And I think people forget we look at the outliers, people who drop into the speaking business and make $1 million because they're famous. For most of us, you've got to be working, you got to be selling, you got to be out there speaking. A lot of it's word of mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And, I run an association. I get probably 20 emails a week from speakers, and everybody says, oh, I do all these outbound emails. Well, I don't even have a budget to pay speakers for my association. So
Yeah.
I get 20 emails a week. What are the people with real budgets getting?
Yeah.
So, it's a slow process. And so much of it, as somebody who I don't hire speakers, but I bring people into some things. I ask other groups in town, who's good, right? So
Mhm.
the word of mouth thing, whether there's a budget or not, is really a big piece of this business. So the more you speak, the more opportunities to speak come your way. And like I said, I'm seeing it now, but it was a 4-year run to get it back to here.
Yeah, it you mentioned the dynamics and everything that changes. The rules change on you sort of midstream. What worked before didn't necessarily work.
So do you remember the book, Who Moved My Cheese?
Yeah, I also had the book Who Stole My Cheese. That
Yeah,
was a
well,
sort of a snarkier version, but yeah, I like the Who Moved My Cheese.
so I'll be really honest. I thought it was a stupid book. I thought it was, the person made millions of dollars. God love him. But I
Yeah,
really was like, oh, come on, a rat waiting for a cheese. That was dumb. In the
yeah.
pandemic, I actually learned why that parable was so powerful,
Mhm,
because my cheese got moved and I was not prepared for it. I mean, I had done everything they told me to do. I had a 6-month emergency fund. I
mhm.
didn't have a 30-month emergency fund.
Yeah,
I had repeat business. I had, a couple of lines of income, but I never dreamed live meetings could shut down. So I never had a plan E for
right.
that. And
Yeah,
my cheese got moved. And I
yeah.
will tell you, as much as I didn't like the book 30 years ago or whenever it came out, boy, that guy was a genius, because if your cheese gets moved and you're not prepared, it is painful.
Yeah, I mean, even if you are prepared, it's somewhat painful, but it's way more painful if you're not. So true that. So you mentioned networking and all the other stuff, and let's go ahead and go along with that theme because it's a lot with what you mentioned during our conversation. It's about, and you just did about getting, get on stages from being on stages and people that and things like that. So sort of walk through what something like, what's the best way to proceed through that? Are there groups you should join, or there, how should you grow that?
Well, all of the above, right? There's no wrong answer to networking and building connections. However, I get calls from people who want to emerging speakers and people who want to be speakers a lot. And my advice is, the most powerful thing if you want to be a working paid professional speaker is you have to have speaker friends. And by that, I don't mean you had a Zoom call with them once, you're connected on LinkedIn. I'm talking about the level of friendship where you have no plans for Thanksgiving. They find out and they invite you to join their family for the day. So I ask people all the time, how many speaker friends, I mean, like real friends, go out to dinner with them, their spouse, they come to Austin, they stay in your house instead of a hotel. How many speaker friends do you have? And most people look at me and they say, well, you. And I'm like, we're not friends. You just bought me coffee at a Starbucks. I'm talking about real friendships.
Yeah.
So the number one thing is, success leaves clues. So you want
Right.
to get around not coaches, not people who wrote a book on how to get into speaking, not people who are selling a class or coaching you. You want to get around people who are really getting paid to do the type of work you want to do, because success leaves clues. So if you get around successful speakers in your lane, right? Similar
Mhm.
type topic, similar type demographic, similar type clients they want to speak for, you know, people think, oh, the speaking business. It's not one business. It's like 12 different businesses. If I lined up 12 speakers, you're going to find 12 different business plan, 12 different types of clients. Some speak for companies, some speak for religious institutions, some speak for associations, some speak to big audiences, some just do, small group training. So you got to get around the people who are doing the work you want to
Right.
do. So the number one way to do that is get involved with the National Speakers Association. And I don't mean just pay dues. I mean, you've got to go to the national conference. And I tell people you got to go for 3 years, because you got to see who makes it for those 3 years. Make friends at your level and grow up with them in the business, and get involved with your local chapter of the National Speakers Association. The pushback I get is, oh, it's expensive. Well, if you want to make it in the business, I could have never done it if 15 years ago I didn't just commit to spending the money to going every single year. And I haven't missed a single National Speakers Association summer conference. They now call it Influence, but it used to just be called the Summer Convention. I haven't missed one in 15 years. And even when I look at the lineup and I think, I know all those people, or I know that information, I still go because it's that person I sit with in the bar. We share a glass of wine. We have a great conversation, who then calls me and says, hey, I just got a lead. It's not right for me, or I'm booked that day. Mm-hmm. And so speakers help their friends. They give them gigs. Yeah. They show them how to market. I have speaker friends all the time who go to my website and be like, I don't like your phrasing. And sometimes they're wrong, but sometimes it's like, oh, that's a really good idea. So speakers help speakers. So that's the first place to network. The second thing is, who's your audience? Do you speak to associations? Every few years, I go to the National Association of Associations, the ASAE. As someone who runs an association, I'm getting active in the Texas Association of Society Executives, so that I can meet other people who do that. And because I'm there running an association, when they find out I speak, now I'm their peer, and now they're curious. So get around go to where your clients are. Mm-hmm. So those are my two things. Whatever your industry is, get involved, and get involved with NSA.
And Gary here, again, thanks, Gary, for the authentic tale. I'll remember that one. But he talks about comedians. You do spend a lot of time in the back. You spend a lot of time on the road getting to know the other ones. Again, not everything's right for you. Not everything's up your alley. And it's good to have people. I would rather give it to somebody that I trust. One is going to make me look good because I know that they're quality and can do that. But two, doing good for others is always, it's good karma.
And if you look at comedians, it's a fascinating thing, right? Because comedy is the hardest use of the spoken word. So I've done over 200 plus open mic nights, and I've been a featured comic in like 11 shows now. Now, I'm not that good. Jerry Seinfeld would not be worried about job security because I'm doing stand-up. But stand-up has taught me to be more playful on stage, to be more confident when I go down a path on stage that isn't working. As a speaker, it's like, it can't be as bad as bombing in a comedy club. So I've gained playfulness and I've gained some confidence on the stage. Yeah. But I've also learned that if you look at the comics who've made it, the ones we watch, on Netflix and stuff like that, they grew up together with other comics. Like you said, they're in the back together. They travel together. They tell each other where the open mics are. They help each other. And then you see like, oh, they started together. Now they're both famous. That's not a coincidence. That's because they open doors for each other. Speakers can do that too.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that advice. So the takeaway is join the NSA, go ahead and get involved with your local chapter, reach out to these associations and stuff, know your business first, or know who your audience is. It's always good to be able to, know who your tribe is, so that that way you're all your marketing stuff is going in that direction. You know what they need. And two, making sure that, you're giving back to others as you go around. You don't, and it may have been you that posted it, but don't, if the first thing you ask is, hey, do you know of any gigs? You're not doing this whole networking thing right. Right. It's it's like anything else. It's sales. I get back to the sales thing that goes on. We've all had that skill. So Thom, where can we see you next? Or, when's Thanksgiving? I guess July actually is next month. The NSA thing, is that?
First week of August is the National Speakers Association Influence Conference in Denver, Colorado, August 2024. I will be there, of course. It's going to shape up to be a pretty good event, I think. So I'll be there with all of my speaker friends.
Cool. Well, I hope to join that group of friends here pretty soon, because it's good people. From everybody I've talked to, it's good people. Tomorrow I've got Carolyn on here, who's a member of the local chapter of NSA as well. So awesome. I get to sort of imbibe
and she's super smart about marketing too.
Excellent. Well, that's what we all need. Marketing is something that everybody needs. So ThomSinger.com. That's Thom with an H.
THOMSINGER.com.
And go rag on his daughter is better than he is, I'm sure, but as a dad, that's the best news I could hear. I'm glad that my kids would be better.
You can go to my website, click on TEDx, watch my newest one, and watch the one of Kate, and then I'll take an email where you tell me why Kate's better than me, because Kate probably is better than me.
Well, good. Thanks a lot, Thom.